The office of Mr. Harold Grayson smelled of polished wood and old papers. I sat on a stiff chair, my hands clasped over my purse, while my son Ethan fidgeted with his smartwatch and his wife Lauren crossed her legs impatiently. Outside, a drizzle tapped against the windows of downtown Burlington, Vermont, but inside, the atmosphere was colder than the street. The notary cleared his throat and began reading the will of my late husband, Walter. Each word pierced my chest. First, he announced small sums for distant cousins and nephews, then the old pickup truck for my eldest grandson. Finally, he looked up and spoke my name. To his wife, Eleanor Mitchell. He leaves the rural property number 1417 and $10. A brief, almost solemn silence was shattered by Lauren's laughter. Her cackle echoed off the walls like breaking glass. "Did you hear that, Ethan?" she said, leaning toward him. $10. A crumbling house and $10. Pathetic. Ethan forced a bitter smile, lowering his gaze, while the other relatives exchanged mocking glances. I felt a lump in my throat, but stayed still. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of my tears. Then Mr. Grayson cleared his throat again and handed me a sealed envelope. "Your husband left this for you alone. He asked me to give it to you at the end." With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Inside was a crumpled $10 bill and a note written in Walter's steady handwriting. "If you can see beyond what's visible, you won't be the pathetic one they think you are." I read the sentence twice. A shiver ran up my spine. I lifted my head and, for the first time in a long while, smiled. It wasn't a smile of joy, but of certainty. Lauren scoffed and stood abruptly, ending her little performance. I carefully tucked the bill into my purse as if it were gold and rose to my feet, outside. The rain continued, the drops pattering against my umbrella as I walked down the cobblestone street. I took a deep breath. I knew that Bill wasn't just any Bill. Walter was speaking to me from beyond, guiding me towards something the others could never imagine. With the sound of the rain marking the rhythm of my steps, I set off toward the old maple house, ready to face whatever he had left hidden. I drove my aging sedan down the narrow road winding through Vermont's misty fields, heading toward the outskirts of town. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained overcast, and the air smelled of damp earth. As I turned onto the gravel path, I saw it, the maple house, silent and solitary, as if it had been waiting for my return for years. I stepped out of the car and walked along the leaf-strewn path. The sound of a nearby stream accompanied each step. When I opened the front door, a creak of wood greeted me. The scent of damp wood, dust, and old memories enveloped me instantly. I entered slowly. Faded photos from my youth with Walter hung on the walls, some from our summers at Lake Champlain, others from winters by the fireplace. On a sideboard sat a pair of dusty, closed trunks. I ran my fingers over them, feeling time dissolve beneath my touch. I began cleaning instinctively. Each swipe of the rag stirred scents that transported me to afternoons spent with Walter, reading faded newspapers while the wind rattled the windows. A knot of nostalgia tightened in my chest, mingled with an odd sense of belonging. When I glanced at the living room ceiling, something caught my eye on the main beam above the cold fireplace. There was a hand-carved mark. I stepped closer and traced it with my fingers. The numbers, though worn by time, were clear 1417. My heart pounded. I pulled the $10 bill from my purse and checked the serial number. There it was, among the letters and digits, 1417. A wave of warmth surged through me, and for a moment, I thought I heard Walter's voice whispering to keep searching. I tucked the bill away, looked around, and knew this house wasn't just a memory. Every plank, every nail, Every shadow seemed to hold a message Walter had left for me, waiting for the moment I was ready to find it. Barely 2 days had passed since my first visit when I heard a car pull up in front of the house. Peering through the window, I saw Ethan step out, looking weary, while Lauren, impeccable as ever, craned her neck to inspect the roof as if the house might infect her with poverty just by being near it. They entered without waiting for an invitation. "Mom," Ethan said in that condescending tone he always used with clients he planned to swindle. "We should sell this place as soon as possible. If we're lucky. Some fool might pay something for this heap of wood." Lauren strode in without asking, her heels clicking on the old floorboards. She pulled out her phone and started recording. Spinning around to capture every corner? "Look at this. The pathetic mansion," she said, laughing, aiming her camera at the fireplace and the dusty trunks. "Not even ghosts would want to live here." I didn't respond. I walked to the table where I'd left the $10 bill, picked it up, and studied it while they prattled on about tearing down walls, repainting, making it presentable to sell for whatever we can get. My gaze drifted to the beam marked with 1417. A steady pulse beat in my chest. They saw ruins. I saw a message only I could understand. Lauren carelessly opened a trunk, wrinkling her nose at the musty smell. "Good Lord, this is like a museum of the poor," she muttered, slamming it shut. I gripped the bill in my hand, staying calm. A quiet pride kept me upright. For the first time in years, their words didn't hurt. Let them laugh. Let them record videos for their friends. They'd never grasped that this house held a value beyond their money-hungry eyes. "Do what you want, Mom," Ethan said finally. "But if we sell now, we'll get something. In a few months, this place won't even be worth the rats living in it." I watched them leave, their laughter fading among the maples, alone in the house. I was resolute. That night, I'd begin exploring every corner, every beam, every shadow, until I found what Walter had hidden for me. Night fell with a steady rain drumming on the maple house's roof like a distant rhythm. I wrapped myself in a thick jacket, grabbed a flashlight, and headed to the basement I'd always avoided. The damp air hit me with the smell of earth and old wood as soon as I opened the creaking door, as if it, too, guarded a secret. I descended the stone steps carefully, my footsteps echoing in the silence. The flashlight's beam cast long shadows on the packed earth walls. I walked, testing the floor with my foot until a hollow sound stopped me. I knelt, brushed my hand over the surface, and found a loose board. With effort, I pried it up, revealing a dark hollow and a small, rusted chest. On it was a yellowed piece of paper with a handwritten number, 1417. My heart raced. I pulled the $10 bill from my pocket and confirmed what I already knew. The same sequence was in its serial number. I turned the chest's lock to those numbers. Click. The lid gave way with a metallic groan. The flashlight illuminated the contents, a leather-bound notebook, several black and white photos of a younger Walter, and a bundle of old land deeds from towns across the region. I sat on the cold floor, flipping through the notebook with trembling hands. It held notes with dates, place names, and sketches of plots. The photos showed Walter with people I didn't recognize, always standing in front of fields or modest houses. Each deed bore his signature. I closed the chest slowly, clutching the notebook to my chest. The basement no longer felt grim, but like a bridge to a part of Walter I'd never known. I realized that quiet, humble man had lived a far more complex life than anyone imagined. I climbed the stairs, the chest in my arms, feeling I'd only opened the first door to a secret that would change everything I thought I knew about my family. I sat at the kitchen table, the leather notebook open before me. The rain tapping the windows was the only witness to my discovery. I read Walter's notes carefully, his steady handwriting detailing dates, towns, and references to farmland. Each line revealed he'd led a secret life I'd never suspected. I learned he'd quietly bought up agricultural land across Vermont for decades, orchards, pastures, and fields that, according to his notes, were now near expanding suburbs. I checked the deeds in the chest. Those once worthless plots were now worth a fortune. Pride and nostalgia mixed as I pictured Walter walking those fields in silence, building a future no one else saw. Digging further, I found an envelope with receipts, bank statements, and printed letters. My heart sank as I recognized Ethan and Lauren's names on several. They were records proving they'd been siphoning family money for years. Luxury car purchases, lavish vacations, unpaid loans, even jewelry bought with shared accounts. Their ostentatious lifestyle was nothing but a mirror of their greed. I sat still, papers in hand. First came anger, a sharp burn in my chest, then silent. Hot tears as I realized Walter was never the poor man they scorned. He hadn't needed to flaunt. He'd waited, patient and silent, to leave a legacy greater than they could imagine. I wiped my tears and carefully stored each document. The public humiliation at the notaries no longer stung. It had become a weapon, a truth that could shift the course of my life and theirs. I closed the chest, feeling betrayal and hope intertwine, and began planning my next move. The next morning, I tucked the notebook and deeds into my purse and drove to the office of Mr. Leonard Hayes, a discreet local lawyer who'd known Walter forever. He greeted me with curiosity and respect. Without preamble, I showed him the documents and explained I needed to register all the properties in my name. He reviewed each deed patiently, then looked up with a restrained smile. "Eleanor, this is pure gold. Walter was a visionary. If we finalize everything in a few weeks, you'll be the rightful owner of land worth millions." A shiver of pride mixed with calm resolve washed over me. I signed the first papers without hesitation. Mr. Hayes promised to handle it quietly. No one in my family would know until it was final. Over the next weeks, I guarded my secret like a treasure. From my living room window, with the framed $10 bill on the mantel, I watched Lauren's perfect life unravel. I overheard her yelling on the phone with banks. I knew their luxury SUV had been repossessed. Their credit cards declined. Even my grandson, always flaunting on social media, faced foreclosure over an unpaid loan. I kept appearing in town in my old coat, smiling humbly, while inside, my silence became my strongest shield. I didn't need to shout or point out their mistakes. I just had to wait, as Walter had his whole life. Each ignored call, each mounting debt, confirmed the moment would come on its own. When the first foreclosure notice hit their mailbox, I knew patience was bearing fruit. And then, I heard the sound I'd waited weeks for, desperate, insistent knocks on the Maple House's door, seeking help from the woman they'd called pathetic. The afternoon had turned gray when the knocks came. I cracked the door and saw Ethan, soaked, tie askew, eyes red, with Lauren trembling behind him in the rain. Her makeup streaked down her cheeks, leaving dark trails on skin she'd always boasted was flawless. "Eleanor," Ethan's voice barely held. "Please, don't let us sink. Forgive us." Lauren, unable to meet my gaze, knelt on the porch, rain soaking her skirt. Her trembling hands clung to the doorframe as if I were her only salvation from an abyss. She stammered through sobs. "I didn't know. I didn't understand. Please, help us." The rain on the maple leaves blended with the echo of their pleas. I stood silent, not opening the door further. In my mind, their humiliations replayed their laughter at the notaries, the mocking videos in this house, the word pathetic wielded like a knife. I felt the weight of years finally tipping in my favor. "You never listened," I said at last, voice steady. "You never looked beyond what you thought you saw." They bowed their heads, defeated. Ethan reached for my hand, but I withdrew it gently. I didn't need to shout or wound with words. My silence and their shame spoke for me. I closed the door slowly, the frame's thud drowning out Lauren's last murmur. For the first time, I didn't feel small before them. Inside the house, a warm calm wrapped around me. I walked to the mantel, gazed at the framed $10 bill, and knew that scrap of paper had changed everyone's fate. The rain kept pounding the roof, and with each drop, I felt the past wash away, readying me for the final move to close our story's cycle. Days after that pleading afternoon, I sat in Mr. Hayes's office, hands steady on the documents. I signed each page with a calm I hadn't felt in years, with every signature. The orchards, pastures, and plots Walter had quietly protected became officially mine. His patience and vision materialized in my life like an invisible shield. I didn't waste time. I sold one of the smaller plots near the county road to a local developer. That sale secured more money than I'd ever seen together. I didn't need luxuries. But for the first time, I could think of myself without guilt renovating the maple house, reinforcing the roof, replacing the windows, restoring the dignity it always held as I oversaw the first repairs. I felt the house breathe with me, shedding the dust and memories of neglect. Each sanded board, each painted wall was a way to honor Walter. But my masterstroke didn't end there. With part of the money, I bought shares in the company where Ethan had worked his whole career. I'd learned from Mr. Hayes and town gossip that it was teetering on collapse due to its debts and mismanagement. I bought quietly, anonymously, becoming a shareholder in something they thought untouchable. The irony was rich as my son and daughter-in-law sank. I invested with the same prudence Walter had taught me without words, for the first time. I felt my life was no longer in anyone's shadow. My silence had become power, my patience a tool bringing them to their knees without a single argument. One afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the new windows of the renovated house, I knew the moment to show the world who the pathetic one really was drew near. And the final lesson was about to begin. Months had passed since I finalized the property transfers and began restoring the maple house. Its walls, once weathered, now glowed with fresh paint, and the creaking floors had been steadied with care. Meanwhile, in downtown Burlington, Ethan and Lauren's lives crumbled slowly. Rumors of their debts spread like wildfire through the town's coffee shops and markets. One afternoon, I heard their ostentatious colonial-style house, once the envy of neighbors, had been foreclosed for non-payment, its windows dark, its lawn unkempt. They appeared at my door again, a shadow of their former selves. Gone were the mockery and laughter. Their faces bore only desperation and defeat. Ethan leaned heavily against the frame, his tailored suit rumpled, eyes hollow. Lauren, her designer scarf soaked from the drizzle, knelt at the foot of the stairs, tears failing to mask her lingering anger. "Eleanor," Ethan whispered, voice breaking, "please. We need your help." Lauren kept her head down, unable to meet my eyes between sobs. She stammered, "We don't know how we got here. We're begging you. Don't turn your back on us." I walked slowly to the mantel, where the framed $10 bill rested, its edges worn but its power undimmed. I lifted it carefully, holding it up with the same calm Walter had infused in his message years ago. This was all I needed to change everything, I said firmly, my voice steady as the Vermont hills. A heavy silence filled the room, thick with their shame. Lauren's sobs grew louder. Her pride shattered before a reality they could no longer hide. Ethan's gaze dropped to the floor, and for the first time, I sensed he understood the depth of their fall. Their world of luxury cars and social media boasts had collapsed under the weight of their greed. As they drowned in despair, I felt a deep peace settle within me. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. Pure and unyielding, the wealth they scorned as useless had restored my dignity, giving me the power to rebuild my life on my terms. The $10 bill wasn't just a symbol, it was the key to a legacy they never valued. Now stronger than any fleeting fortune, the future stretched before me, vibrant with possibilities. Standing in the renewed Maple House, I was ready to face whatever came, fearless, certain that this lesson was only the beginning of my new chapter. Morning sun filtered through the maple leaves, brushing the freshly tended garden of the old house. I sat on a wooden bench, the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers stirring a peace I hadn't known in years. The silence was a refuge, a space where past and future intertwined in every renewed corner. The garden, now vibrant with wildflowers and neatly trimmed shrubs, seemed to breathe with me, each petal a testament to the care I'd poured into this place. It was no longer just a house. It was a sanctuary reborn from Walter's vision. On the living room wall, beside the fireplace, I hung the $10 bill in a simple but elegant frame. It wasn't just paper. It was the emblem of my reclaimed dignity, of the patience and wisdom that brought me here. Each time I looked at it, I recalled Walter's hidden message, his promise, and the path it led me down to become the woman I am now. That crumpled bill, once mocked, held more power than the wealth Ethan and Lauren chased so blindly. I thought of all the times they called me pathetic, the scornful looks, the mocking laughter. I remembered the weight I carried for years, the loneliness of my silences, the strength they never saw. That day, when I inherited $10 and an old house, I didn't inherit poverty or defeat. I inherited something far more valuable: my freedom, my self-respect, and the certainty that no one can define us without our consent. The Maple House, once crumbling, now stood proud, its new windows gleaming, its walls echoing with memories I chose to honor. Knocks came at the door that afternoon, twice, sharp and desperate. I didn't move to answer. I no longer needed words or justifications. My silence was the most powerful response, the close of a chapter they'd written with indifference and arrogance. I walked through the house, touching the polished banister, the restored mantel, feeling Walter's presence in every detail. The floorboards no longer creaked. They sang of resilience. As the sun set and shadows lengthened across the garden, I knew this house and this bill were Walter's true legacy, one not measured in money, but in the courage to rebuild and the wisdom to close doors that should never have been opened. I sat by the window, watching the last light fade, and felt a quiet triumph. My life was mine now, shaped by my choices, not their judgments. If you were in my place, with this bill and this house, would you forgive, or would you close the door for good?